Thank you, Ira. Hello, everyone. My name is Gleb. I'm product manager at Lyft's data division. I've been at Lyft for over 2 years. And today I'm going to talk about how we use Anodot at Lyft for performing anomaly detection in real time. And I'll cover why performing anomaly detection is important for our business, how Anodot helps us to monitor our metrics at scale, what high-level architecture we're using with Anodot and AWS, and also some key takeaways we had after working with Anodot for over half a year now. So first of all, we are a physical business in that we are operating in physical world. We are actually moving people, and we operate on multiple timescales. So on a secondly basis, we're making decisions of matching passengers with drivers. On a minutely basis, we are setting the prices, meaning adjusting our prime time algorithms to match supply and demand levels. On an hourly basis, we could be applying market levers. So we could be offering some incentives to the drivers or discounts to the passengers. And then on daily and weekly basis, we're performing budgeting. So we are allocating budgets for marketing, again, for driver and passenger engagement. So there's a lot of complexity on different timescales that happens within our business. And the same applies to the geographical dimensions. So we operate in over 300 cities, and that maps to over 13,000 of zip codes and over 300,000 market areas in which we could be adjusting prices or offering incentives for the drivers. So there's a tremendous amount of time and geographical complexity that we are operating in and have to monitor. So, but that aside, if we consider just 100 top market and product metrics that we would monitor at Lyft regularly to understand how we're performing, and we multiply that by a number of cities we want to monitor those metrics for, we get over 30,000 metrics that we have to monitor, and we simply don't have that many people to do it all the time. So this is where Anodot actually comes into play, and the solution to the problem is to only make people look at the metrics when they deviate from the baseline or from the forecast. In this case, you are not wasting time looking at the numerous dashboards and charts just to check if something is going according to the plan. You're getting proactively notified whenever things deviate from the plan. So I'd like to walk you through a real case that we had with Anodot, where Anodot helped us detect a real problem in our system. So some time ago, we shipped a new feature for our driver incentives service. And unfortunately, that feature unknowingly broke the integration with our billing platform. So with Anodot, we are monitoring every single line item that comes through our billing platform. That doesn't mean that we're sending all line items to Anodot as they are. We're sending aggregates. So basically, how many line items of each type we're billing against passengers or drivers in a given region with other metadata on a minutely basis. So Anodot helped us detect that something was going wrong with a particular line item, and what was going wrong is that the numbers that we were billing, the count of line items that were going through the billing system was way below the expected value, and then ultimately plummeted to 0. So that helped us understand that something was going wrong and then escalate the problem to the appropriate teams. And interestingly, when we were doing a post-mortem on the investigation, we found that Anodot was able to detect the deviation in this metric before the bad code, the bad pull request, was rolled out to 100% of the production machines. So Anodot was able to, if you see this orange line, so where it starts to deviate from the expected value, so this is where we rolled out our change to Canary is where the production services get 1 to 3% of the traffic. So that illustrates the power of real-time anomaly detection system and how early you can detect deviations and problems in your business. Now, in this particular example, we had one problem. I was unfortunately the only person who received this alert, and I obviously am not managing the billing platform. And it took me some time to actually figure out what is the appropriate team and people that I should escalate this alert. And fortunately, I was able to reach them in time. But in many cases, useful alerts that are generated by Anodot are not reaching appropriate people, and I'll be talking about this in the key takeaways. So this is a high-level architecture that we're using for sending metrics to Anodot. So at Lyft, we're using AWS Kinesis as a mechanism to work with the real-time events that are collected from both servers and clients. We have a microservice architecture, so we have a tremendous number of the generators of those analytical events. And events could be anything. They could be registering, as I mentioned, line items that are billed. They could be notifying us that a ride was requested by the passenger. They could be notifying us that a passenger opened the app, and so on and so forth. So for actual processing of events, we use a streaming compute engine, Apache Flink, that we roll out on AWS as well. So Flink helps us aggregate the events in real time by certain time windows. So for certain events, we're using 1 minute time window. For certain, we use greater windows. But we found the minutely window the most useful because we can then roll it up in Anodot anyways without losing the granularity. So the second up listens to those aggregates and then batches the metrics and then sends them to Anodot API. Anodot API was quite straightforward to work with. The only thing that we had to account for is the query per second limitation. So we had to provision that for that in our code. An important aspect of rolling out anomaly detection at a big company, which is Lyft, is to how do you make it easy to publish new metrics? So we have all sorts of events, all sorts of use cases, and many teams that are interested in performing anomaly detection. So if we were to ask them to write Java code and submit it to Flink every time that they would need to create a new metric, that wouldn't get us any good adoption in the company. So what we did instead is we created this simple configurable interface that users can use to submit new metrics. So in this case, what we're doing is we're specifying what particular event we want to aggregate and send to Anodot, and the aggregate here name is counter. So it's very intuitive. We're basically counting client actions, and then the dimensions signify what properties we are aggregating those events by. So in SQL terms, that means count, event client action, group by OS, app version, action, and result, which could be failure or success. And so these configurations allow us to ship new metrics into Anodot really easily, and that helps scale the adoption. So we don't have to actually write any specific code unless we need custom filters or any custom business logic. The things that we also found helpful to configure is the buffer. So basically how much time we wait for events to arrive before sending them to Anodot. And that helps us control for late arriving events. For example, if the difference between event occurring, let's say on the mobile app, and the event being ingested by our systems is large. So finally, some key takeaways that we had from working with Anodot. So first of all, you have to start with a defined use case. What it means is you cannot treat Anodot as a magic black box that you send all your data and you expect it to find what's going wrong with your business. You have to come up with a real business use cases. For example, I want to monitor line items in my billing system because sometimes when systems break, I know that some line items can stop being billed, or I want to monitor IP addresses that users use to register for Lyft, and an anomaly in a particular spike in a particular group of IP addresses can be a signal for a fraudulent activity. And so when those use cases are a prerequisite for turning on anomaly detection, then we found that the implementation is much more successful. Second, ensure that you have a proper escalation policy. What it means is Anonot is really good at finding anomalies in data, but you also have to make sure that those anomalies find the right people who are actually responsible for those metrics and can make decisions, can investigate and take action. And those anomalies should find those people really seamlessly and as fast as possible. So as I mentioned in my example with the line items, we clearly had a challenge with the escalating the alerts to the right people that we had to solve. And it's especially important in large organizations where you have multiple teams, multiple owners that are changing. So at Lyft, we found that for some teams, email is the best channel, and we subscribe a team, basically a mailing list to an alert. For some teams, using our chat app is the best way to reach them. So we basically subscribe the whole channel in the chat app to Anonot alerts. Next, false positives are unavoidable. So anomaly detection is a hard problem, and you're always going to navigate this trade-off of being too sensitive and having too many alerts, or being overly conservative and missing something important. We found that it's impossible to only get alerts which are actually represent bad things that happen with the business. The trick is to find the good ratio. So in my personal experience, maybe a ratio of 5 false positives to 1 actual problem is a good one, because you can always skip through charts and alerts that look suspicious and then just tell that they are not actual problems. And then finally, start small and then expand. So Anonot makes it really easy to send metrics at scale. So you, let's say, turn on all these counters and you segment them by multiple properties, and now you're monitoring, let's say, ride requests by ride type and by region and by something else. But a lot of the times, if your metrics are too detailed and there are too many of them, it's hard to actually fit a particular use case. So we found it useful to start with maybe a less granular metric, and then if that's useful, increase the granularity, meaning adding additional properties to segment the metric by. And then it helps users to really get a good use of Anonot as an anomaly detection system. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my presentation, and I'll be open to answer your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.